A group of masked individuals attacked protesters in Hong Kong. I'm Marco Perri. Welcome to the Perri platform. Hong Kong is back in the news this week, but not for a good reason. The situation over there, in terms of protesting, it continues to descend into chaos. Citizens have been protesting against an extradition bill for weeks, and China has given up very little ground. So, for those of you who are unaware, Hong Kong is viewed as a special region that is autonomous. In other words, they're supposed to have a separate legal, admin, and judicial system from China. It felt like the mainland was trying to chip away at that with this new bill that they introduced, which was revolving around extradition. It would effectively grant China the power to transport any suspected criminals out of Hong Kong and into the mainland for sentencing. This caused a negative reaction from the populace of Hong Kong for two main reasons, really. The first is, they don't necessarily trust China to act faithfully. You can easily imagine a situation where someone the government does not like, or someone the government deems dangerous, is labeled as a criminal, extradited, and never heard from again. It's a lot of power to forfeit to the main government, and citizens feared it would be used maliciously. I think they have good reason to fear that. The second reason why they are opposed to the bill is the vastly different standards of judicial process between Hong Kong and China. China has been shrouded in mystery for quite some time now, and their legal system is no exception to that. It's not entirely out of the realm of possibilities to assume that the legal system is going to be influenced by the government's agenda. It can sneak its way into things such as justice hearings, and the people of Hong Kong do not want to be held accountable to such arbitrary means. I would argue that Canada, well, we got a taste of that with the Huawei situation, but I digress. The bottom line is the Hong Kong residents feel that the extradition bill is a slippery slope and they don't want to enact it in the first place. The residents have been actively opposed to it and they simply put, do not want it at all. They've been very vocal about that and they're hoping and praying that China withdraws from pressures from not only the Hong Kong citizens, but the global community. The protesters who have amassed a fight against the bill, they've taken largely to public protests to get their message across. When this first started, I really did wonder though how effective protests would be, but they've effectively set my doubts aside. The protesters have been relentless and they've propelled the issue to the eyes of the world stage. They've amassed some of the largest protests in Hong Kong's history and they're letting people know what's up. They continue to press on and they've actually started to get their voices heard. Maybe not by China, but by everyone around the globe, we're listening. It's really pretty amazing what they've been able to do. Yesterday, protesters faced a new form of roadblock, though, in their quest. Some very serious opposition responses led to violent attacks and chaos in these streets. It seems that they were gaining too much traction and a group, we don't know who yet, wanted to silence the protesters a little bit, or at the very least, deter future displays of protesting. Pretty fishy. As I go through the situation, you'll see that some clues are here that may reveal it wasn't the work of any ordinary group. So, according to the HKFP, hundreds of masked assailants dressed in white assaulted residents, protesters, journalists, and a lawmaker on Sunday as a response to them protesting against the extradition bill. I really wonder, which group would want to silence protesters about that? There's your first clue right there. There are a bunch of photos and videos all over the internet, and it's pretty scary stuff. People got the snot beat out of them, and there was nowhere to run because they launched the attack in a subway station. So these idiots, the violent anti-protesters, they were equipped with bamboo sticks and other objects to attack people. They were just wailing and smashing anybody now wearing white and a mask. That's how they identified themselves, this group of individuals. They obviously didn't want to attack each other, so that was their costume of sorts. They were wearing the white and the mask. If they saw someone else wearing the white and the mask, they would move on. But if you weren't lucky enough to be dressed that way, you were going to get smacked. And that's how the attackers stayed coordinated. 45 people were injured and one left in critical condition. The attacks largely occurred, as I mentioned, in a subway line. Imagine you're on your local subway and the doors open up and hundreds of people come onto the subway with bamboo sticks and they start hitting you. It's a very narrow passage and there isn't much way to go. On top of that, it's probably very surprising and caught a lot of protesters and citizens even off guard. A Democratic Party lawmaker was one of the victims, and he was smashed so badly he was bleeding from his mouth while he was doing a social media live stream. People had their backs torn open, limbs injured, and it was pure pandemonium. I actually really suggest that you watch the videos to get a grasp of how crazy it was. Simply put, these attackers, they are thugs. Plain and simple. They should have had their asses handed to them by law enforcement, but guess what? The police officers were not present during the skirmish. In fact, they never showed up until after they left, and once they finally arrived and performed their investigation, they gathered the facts. Nobody was arrested. They weren't able to find anybody of the entire group who came there to attack people. They even went on record to say they found no weapons. So, the police roll up in riot gear after the attackers leave and they don't arrest anybody. Not even with security cameras. To top things off too, you have to be aware, the mask these guys were wearing, it wasn't like a Halloween mask that covered their entire face. It was like a surgical mask that covered their mouth. And you're telling me not even one person was able to get caught? What a coincidence. This is the same police force that fired tear gas and rubber bullets at protesters not too long ago. Nowhere to be seen today with that sort of artillery. The HKFP also reports another interesting piece of information. They have a video showing a pro-China lawmaker, Junius Ho, applauding and giving the thumbs up to the attackers. He allegedly went as far as praising these people as heroes. That's coming from a lawmaker. People have a suspicion that this was a political maneuver, and I think that's plausible. Now, let's turn our attention to the implications of all this. I can think of at least two, and they're really both very dangerous. First, fear is going to spread. Not all protesters are going to falter, but some will. This was a small taste of the violence that can ensue. Maybe next time, instead of bamboo sticks, they use metal rods, or knives, or guns. These are all thoughts that are going to be rushing through protesters' heads next time they plan to organize. It was a sneak attack, it caught them off guard, and now they're going to be rattled and thinking about that when future events come up. People are going to be forced into submission via threat of violence. It's a horrible reality, and it undermines the people's ability to influence government. If you're too scared to voice an opinion because somebody's going to jump on the train and beat you with a bamboo stick, I would not call that a civilized society. As I've said before, the government should fear the people, not the other way around. If you have people who fear the government, that's basically a tyranny, and yeah, good luck with that. Even if the government isn't behind this attack, the effects will still occur because the protesters and the protests are directly political. They are protesting against an extradition bill. You can't say this issue is not steeped in politics. When bodily harm and the potential for even death enter the equation, people are far less likely to engage. This is true up to a tipping point though. There comes a time when bodily harm and death are not as bad as the current conditions you live in, and a revolt or a rebellion will occur. I'm not saying Hong Kong is anywhere close to that level, but the more you oppress the people, the more you hurt them, the more you make them afraid, the more these flames fan. It's a bad situation for the long-term prosperity of Hong Kong and China, and the relations are going to be damaged. China should be condemning these attacks if they have any sense of justice within them, but even if they do, I'm not too sure it means too much because they're still trying to press upon the people of Hong Kong a bill they so actively oppose. The second consequence of this attack is even more dastardly. I think it's very likely this attack was calculated as a provocation of sorts. They chose to use bamboo sticks over something more dangerous for a reason. If the goal was to scare people, I don't think that lines up. It has to be something deeper than that. It feels almost as if they want people to come away with a certain hope of being able to defend themselves. Think about it. Bamboo sticks aren't the worst weapon that could have been used against them. You might almost say the protesters may think they were lucky to encounter that versus something like a pipe. In a sense, it comes off as a trap to me, meant to bait people into adopting violence. Largely, the protesters have been peaceful. What happens when you feel the need to defend yourself from an attacker though? On top of that, what happens when you feel that it's very possible that you can defend yourself? It's not like these attackers came and completely bodied them, sent all of them to the hospital, and crushed all of their hope like that. It's very different. There's still hope to defend yourself. You'll likely come to the next protest armed. What happens if you get provoked again and you're forced to defend yourself now? The narrative, which is very powerful and key to this, can easily shift at this point away from being peaceful protesters to labeling them as violent rioters. All it really takes is one protester to slip up to condemn the entire cause, and the probability of that heightens when you feel scared and when you are in a defensive state of mind. If you give the government a valid reason to take more measurable force against you, they're going to use it and use anti-violence as their guise for violence. It's hypocritical, but that's what's going to happen without a doubt. If the protesters start to use violence back, they're going to be labeled as the bad guys, and it's not going to play out well for them. It will be all too easy for China then to use force to permanently silence them. You've also opened the door to a form of vigilante justice, as the police are not doing anything. People, the protesters or the citizens of Hong Kong, they may take it upon themselves to react. Now, more than ever, the protesters will need to maintain composure and stay on their peaceful protesting course. Global powers need to look at that, and it seems that right now people are just afraid of China, but it's unfortunate because it acts as a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we don't do anything now, things will get worse, and then we'll really be screwed, wondering to ourselves why we didn't act when we had the chance. Without foreign involvement, it's very clear how this is going to play out. China's going to play the long game, and eventually, things are going to shift. The citizens of Hong Kong can only protest and last for so long. The worst possible outcome for them would be their protests die out, the media loses sight of the issue, we lose interest, and their cause fades to darkness as the extradition bill gets forced upon them. Then, it's a stone's throw away from the next bill, and the next bill, and the next one. From a Canadian perspective, it's tremendously important that we show support for the protesters of Hong Kong because we've also felt the wrath of China. From the Huawei incident that I keep mentioning, it's been so pivotal and critical as of Canada's most recent current events because it's shown the world that China is willing to bully countries who do not support their agenda. Their own people of Hong Kong are being forcibly suppressed, and I'm not saying it was the Chinese government who orchestrated that attack, but there was still an attack done to intimidate protesters who were trying to fight against a Chinese regime, against a Chinese agenda. Something's fishy there, and I'm not too sure what to make of it just yet. All I know is a lot of countries now are being put on the chopping block, and if they're not there yet, it's very soon that it could happen. The one thing that's clear to me is China's not playing by the international rule book. They have their own set of standards, and they're hiding behind the shadows to not expose that. We need to dig deeper and truly figure out what we can do as a global community. The only way something happens is if we band together. Individually, almost every country is too minuscule to do anything, but together, might have a stone's throw chance at making a change. I'll continue to update you on the latest developments in this story, and hopefully we come across some good news in the near future. So, that's about it for today. Thanks for joining me on the Perri platform. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to leave a review, and follow me on Twitter at Perri Platform. I'll see you soon.